I'm just curious, just knowing your expertise, and your philosophical background, do you have hope moving forward, hope for the future? Do you have for Aelfin, like is there anything that's bringing you hope? Are you like bummed for his future, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I can't think of a time in human history, certainly it's not civilized history, where I wouldn't have great concerns about the world he's growing up in.
Sure.
It might be the Inquisition I'm worried about nabbing him. It might be the fact that we're destroying all the forests for mass on the English fleets, and there's not going to be any forest left to sustain us. Well, I could go on and on. Probably there's never been a scarier time, both in terms of culture and how fast culture changes and the direction it's going, directions, I should say, since it's polarization, and in science. I mean, everything from artificial intelligence to nuclear conflagration and the way we're pushing our weight around the world today. All of that are greatly concerning. Endangered species dying and going extinct, the well-being of plants, even the fate of herbalism and whether or not we're allowed to do it. There's so many things to worry about, and yet the challenges will be the same for him that it always has been, which is how do we, in a world of great challenges that calls upon us to be as maximally in our body and in our consciousness and in our caring as possible, and in cultures that are often trying to lead us astray into whether it's authoritarianism or dogma or all these other things. How can we determine a reality for ourselves? How can we become ourselves within that reality in a way that's meaningful, significant, and gives back? We can do that through religiosity, through an earth-based spirituality is what we do. We can do it through service, such as you do, all the ways that you should give back. But to find ways in which to, in the moment, what are the options? And every single day, whether it's now or 50 years from now, whether it's when people are pointing missiles at each other, or still trying to get in a crop, with hand tools 1,000 years ago, it's the same thing. It's how can we A, be ourselves, B, survive, and C, find ways to give back and have a beautiful moment. The one thing I like a lot of things about Eastern religion, as forceful as I can be in terms of political change, but I like the idea that you really only have the now. And already my son has had and given to me moments that are far more fulfilling and exemplary and exciting and incomprehensible sometimes, and just amazing and mystical than I could ever imagine. Every moment that he has is a blessing that we gave him by deliberately having him. It was actually my first child where it wasn't just another great surprise, but rather something we tried very hard to make happen. Yeah. And I don't regret that decision for a moment. We gave him a life of possibility, and no matter how difficult the world ever is, he has a chance to be different from the worst of it and to enjoy the best of it.
Well, I'm very encouraged for Aelfin, knowing his parents are badasses and very unique people, and he's got a really cool place to grow up and away from all the city life and all that. So I wasn't going to plan on asking you this, but what do you think our purpose as humans is? Are we here to evolve and grow and change? And do you believe in any sort of like energetic afterlife or anything like that? Or is that, I don't know if that's beyond the scope of what you're willing to talk about for the podcast, but I'm genuinely curious, just based again, like on all of your life experience, what you've come to.
Well, based on a deep understanding of history, I would say that humans have not demonstrated a specific purpose, certainly not a benevolent one. I think what happens is that we individually have a purpose in reaction to being part of a species that, like all species, grows up as a great experiment, and then what works continues working and the species survives, or doesn't work anymore and the species either adapts or dies out. We can talk about like the ancient giant Irish elk, for example, that went extinct. For the longest time, growing the horns on their heads allowed them to show the dominance in the mating rituals, pass on the strongest genes and make great strong children. to dig up the lichen underneath the crust of the snow. It was an advantage to hold off predators. But eventually it got so large that the very neck bones of vertebrae could not support the weight of it. So they were doomed by a process of change, which they could not consciously and responsibly react to. The fate of humanity would be the same if we don't take responsibility for the kinds of changes that we are making and to act accordingly for the good of our own survival and for the planet's. So I would say that we are a magnificent mistake full of full of wondrous blessings. I mean, what other creature can tell fantastic stories, whether true or not? You know, not, not even artificial intelligence, which now can write scripts and make art, could exist without the creative spark of the human mind. So what we brought to the table isn't always as noble or as elegant as what other wild creatures, other animals and plants demonstrate. But it is unique and excitingly unique in a way that's unprecedented prior to humanity. What we do that will either be to cause massive destruction, as we have to the planet, and then eventually end our own possibilities of human survival, at which point the planet will re-inhabit itself with other ever more conscious beings, because the evolutionary drive is for development of life, and the deeper drive, what we call a spiritual drive, is for it to become more conscious, more aware, more embodied, you know, and more able to move amongst the realms that are not just defined by the physical world.
Any thoughts on like what happens after we pass away?
Well, certainly plenty of thoughts and never any certainty.
Sure.
I know at the best I will have some consciousness. We would each have consciousness that made us aware both of the mistakes we made, the experiences we've had, the lessons that come from it, and be aware of how that's been transmitted into the world and what's happening to what we love, the plants, the gardens, the children that we love, that we gave birth to, the grandkids that we haven't met yet. At best, that would be the scenario. Probably at the worst, the scenario is that we become reassimilated just as nutrients when you biodigest material in your compost. You know, we are reassimilated into the whole of the Gaian planet, and not just the nutrients that we are, the actual, you know, the calories that can be had from our body and the calcium in our bones, but rather the spirit of what it meant for us to be alive becomes this impregnating force within this larger context, with this vat of material. There's an anonymity to that that's scary. You have to take a philosophical approach to it to find it positive, that your identity as an individual is lost to the identity of a whole. But certainly one thing is true, no matter which scenario we talk about, that we don't disappear. We're never insignificant. It's not that we don't matter. We remain a part of this. We were a part of it before we were born. We were a part of this living, Gaian, planetary, and spirited whole long after our personal individual deaths. And that's something that gives me, you know, great satisfaction. I can't guarantee my effect or even how I'll be read or seen or interpreted. What I can't guarantee the health of our children, the well-being of our children, and the world that they'll face. I certainly can guarantee that nothing about us is diminished, that everything we have is significant, that we can set it towards a purpose that is wondrous, ethical, beautiful, and it benefits the planet as much as any artwork or any blossoming flower ever has. That is a purpose worth being alive for, whether you're an individual or a species.